Hello everyone, I am Ruhan Jwala coming live from the BlendKit studio, and this is our fifth and final session in our series of weekly webinars for BlendKit 2016 as we wrap up week 5, Quality Assurance in Blended Learning. What a learning journey this has been for all of us. It seems like yesterday we started this journey. However, the journey is not yet completed for those who intend to submit a portfolio for review. And let me reassure you that we will support you during the submission process. With us today is our colleague John Pizzo, our production manager that is, and our blended consultants Linda and Kelvin. Also joining us are our guest panelists Dr. Dylan Barth and Alex McDaniel, whom I will introduce to you more formally in a moment. At the end of this session today, you'll be sharing a number of important course wrap-up details with you. So please stick around for that. Today we want to take you down memory lane. Globally, the BlendKit resources have been used extensively to guide the development of courses in various countries. Here we have the BlendKit 2015 team, and of course we have our consultant Linda, who is taking Kelvin around at a conference on one of these devices. In addition, we have our production team at work. Next image. As we continue down memory lane, we see here our past participants from other countries. And of course, we have the BlendKit flag and our dear beloved consultant Kelvin making a last pitch for BlendKit 2012. Next slide, please. We have another participant here showing her chapter 5 and getting ready to blend. And we have another participant displaying his trophies of badges. Of course, we have Sarah, and she's getting support from her cuddly cat, our first BlendKit cat. The other photograph shows Dr. Fields showing her work in progress over spring break. So that is our collection of our special surprise for this week. Now, our poll is already up, and we want to ensure that we do have information here for you. Let us see what you're thinking about, and let us see what you're thinking regarding quality assurance. Next slide, please. Poll 1. What do you see as the biggest potential obstacle to completing your blended learning course? And of course, time constraints came on top, 90%, and I'm pleased to continue with the poll, and depending on other tasks. So I do know you have a busy schedule. Nevertheless, let us plan accordingly for the completion of our course, and if you do intend to submit a portfolio, that is. Poll 2 indicates that has your institution or college department adopted formal standards to guide blended learning courses, course evaluation that is, and of course over 11% indicated yes, no had a resounding 88.9%. And the next one we look at, the next poll, is it's taking us on a personal note. Do you believe at least one colleague whom you could comfortably invite to review your course on your blended course, that is? And of course, we have 70% saying yes, don't know, 10%, don't know, 20%. And I'm sure that if you do go around, your colleagues are willing to help. So please do network at that point in time. And our final poll, have you found written criteria for blended course quality that you could adopt for share with colleagues? And of course, 60% indicated yes, 40% said no, but I'm sure as you go through the course content, you will see information regarding that. Now, let us look at adding more questions if you need. As we hear from our guest panelists today, please listen to their views on quality assurance within the blended course design. During the presentation, please use the Q&A panel to post any comments or questions which you'd like to ask the panelists. If we do have time, we'll take these questions. Otherwise, we'll try to get those addressed after today's session, as we have done in the past. Our guest speakers, or presenters. Please allow me to introduce to you Dr. Dylan Barth from the University of Wisconsin and Alex McDaniel from Metropolitan State University of Denver. Dr. Dylan Barth is an interim associate director at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee Learning Technology Center, where he coordinates the faculty development program for online and blended teaching. Alex McDaniel is a senior online class developer and interactive applications specialist at the Metropolitan State University of Denver. Welcome to you both. I will begin my questions with Dylan. Once Dylan has responded, I will turn over the question to Alex. I will then do the reverse order. Dylan, my first question is, peer evaluation is part of the quality assurance in many institutions. What are the best ways, best practices to get students to evaluate other students' work?
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. I think that there are kind of two pieces to this question, two answers. As part of my role here, I also teach a business writing course, so students are often evaluating each other's work as part of the course. And so I think providing opportunities to model what it is that you want students to comment on or to provide feedback on. One of the things that I do is, because it's a blended course, you meet face-to-face compared to an online course, we regularly look at anonymous student samples so that they can kind of get a sense of, as a class, we can talk about the main features that we should be kind of focusing on, both during the revision process and in the peer evaluation process. So I think that really helps manage their expectations about what I'm hoping that they'll do during this. The other is also accountability, so making sure that that there is a part of the assessment plan is including peer evaluation, so that they know that it's both important to me and it's important to their grade. And I tend to use a rubric to evaluate these, and they're very loosely graded. It's not really a high stakes kind of thing, but those are kind of like two practices that I try to incorporate. I also try to make sure that students understand that when you're giving feedback, of course you're helping your fellow students, but you can also learn a lot about, if it's some sort of project that they're working on, you can learn a lot about your own project too when you're looking at what other students have provided. So often this is a matter of asking them to look at one or two students' papers in an online environment. Sometimes this takes place in the face-to-face environment. But either way, I do try to make sure that I am modeling that practice for them.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, and thank you for everyone for being here today. Dylan, I agree entirely with what you were talking about. When I teach as well, and when I work with my colleagues and other faculty members, one of the things that we look at with a best practice when getting students to evaluate other students' work is that we want to have very clear standards as far as what is being evaluated and how it's being evaluated. And this includes, all the regular stuff of, behavior and criteria and degree. And this allows the students to, when they are evaluating others' work, and this is either online or in our face-to-face sessions, to know very clearly what are they evaluating, what criteria and to what degree are they evaluating each other's work. Then there's always a reflective piece that allows the student to then internalize that process once they're receiving the feedback from their peers. So step one is everyone does their project. Step two, you evaluate based on very, very clear criteria, and this is the same criteria that will be applied towards your final product or your project. And then when you are evaluating others, you're going through those standards, through the criteria, through the degrees of mastery, and applying that towards somebody else's. So that way, by the time it comes back to you when you're receiving the feedback, you understand the process of what does it look like to assess somebody's work based on these. And you get a variety of exposure to different material, different projects, different ideas and concepts with the same standards. So then the final component of that is to make sure that the evaluation and feedback is done in such a timely manner that the students can then reflect on that process and apply what they've learned, not only from the feedback they've received, but from going through the process of applying these assessment standards to a variety of other projects. And now they can come back and look at their own project with a very, very different perspective of that of an evaluator and not just a producer. So that's kind of some of the ways we've been able to find that we get greater participation and more meaningful participation with student evaluation of others' work.
Thank you so much, Alex, for that in-depth response, and to Dylan too. Alex, a definition for course quality is often elusive. How do you define and evaluate the quality of a blended course?
This is the $1,000,000 question ultimately. So, I mean, you can look at it from enrollments, retention. You could look at it from ultimately multiple different perspectives. But I think the way that you need, well, at least the way that we do, is to look at it from the end result. What is the net change on the learner? Does it show that this has been a meaningful learning experience for the learner? Can we, with good inter-rater reliability, can we say that the students who attended this blended learning course at least met the standards that other course delivery methods had? As well as hopefully exceeding it. What we found is blended courses, when intentionally and thoughtfully developed and designed and then implemented, have yielded increased mastery, increased learning outcomes for students, increased quality of learning outcomes for students. Some of it can be evaluated based on, we have some perceptual issues that we do, and we ask them, did they enjoy it? Was it engaging? Things like that. But then we want to look at really at hard numbers as well. Did the course have a good enrollment? Did it maintain, right? So did we not only get these students, but did they engage and move forward? We also do a lot of analytics on the online portion and look at, we look at 3 different types of engagement. 1 is student-to-student engagement, 2 is student-to-instructor engagement, and 3 is student-to-material engagement. And we say, okay, how much time did they spend actually engaging in each of these different platforms? How many clicks did they do? How much did they interact? These kind of different things. And then we look at attendance inside of the face-to-face portions of class and the interactions there. And we try and triangulate the data to say, okay, are the students engaged? Does it have meaningful impact on the learning outcomes? Are they retaining information? And are we retaining the students' interests? So these are some of the elements that we use as we move forward on a course-by-course level, and then we also have some institutional evaluation processes that we go through. But this is, I think, more to the point of this question.
Thank you so much. Dylan, you want to add anything to that question, please?
Yeah, I would. I think that's, Alex, fantastic approaches, especially in looking at so much data around student success in the course. And I guess what I would add is a little bit in terms of evaluating the quality of a blended course before it runs. So Alex talked about after it's completed, and so you can really get a sense of how well students learned, how well the instructor did. Before a course runs, you kind of want to get a sense, is this going to be okay? And at UWM, we talk a lot about the life cycle of evaluation and doing some of that evaluation early on and looking at things that may be independent of students right now. Is the instructor stating learning objectives in the syllabus in the course? Do the assessments within the course, do they tend to align with those learning objectives? Does the content and the activities, do they support that kind of work leading up the food chain to those learning objectives? For blended specifically, even thinking about things like, well, is an instructor, or am I as an instructor, leveraging each of these environments most effectively? So I think a lot of talk about flipped classrooms, of course, and putting content delivery online instead of the face-to-face, that seems like a more effective use of student time to have more activities in your face-to-face sessions. So that would be something that I would look at if I were working with an instructor in terms of are you leveraging those out most effectively. And I will say that from a part of my role is to provide these kinds of evaluations to instructors, and Blended tends to have a particular challenge in looking at a course design and trying to provide feedback, because you don't always know what's going on in the face-to-face sessions, and you kind of have to sort that out a little bit, do some sometimes midterm face-to-face evaluations, or have a sense of how those components are fitting in, and how the integrated elements of both the online and face-to-face elements are working together.
Thank you very much, Dylan and Alex, for that. Dylan, I think that is a follow-up question to the last one that I asked. And when we look in the context of evaluation, course evaluation for the last decade or so, it has played an important role in shaping the landscape of K-12 and higher education. Specifically, what role does student evaluation is playing in relation to teaching effectiveness and course quality in a blended course?
Well, I think there's two parts. One is student evaluations. I think how we tend to think of them is very useful for department chairs in determining how effectively an instructor is teaching, but that doesn't always really translate into teaching effective course quality. And so I think of this as students as just one of three pieces of an evaluation plan for a course. Students can tell you things like about workload, how difficult they may be having with particular assignments and things like that. But they only really know so much about pedagogy. They only know so much about what's good for them. And so I think you can get that information, particularly earlier in the semester. So if you're doing kind of 4-week or midterm kinds of surveys to just get a sense of where students are at in a course, that can be very helpful. But I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the student evaluation over things like the instructor kind of reflection about how a course is going. Instructors are the content experts, so they sort of know where students are in terms of the greater level of assessments. And then, as I think Alex mentioned too, having peers, or maybe this came up a little bit earlier, having peers give some feedback on the courses who can be objective, that their work is not being evaluated by the instructor, that they don't really have a stake in the game necessarily. And they may not be content experts either, but they can take a look at it at a course design and sort of see, well, okay, where are some areas of improvement? And a lot of times this can be your centers for excellence in teaching and learning have staff to do this, or it can be within the department as well. So kind of a roundabout way, but that's my answer.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Alex, do you want to add anything to that response?
I got to say, Dylan just nailed it straight out of the gate. One of the things that you had said was that students only know so much about pedagogy, and that is very important to understand as you're looking at the influence of the learner evaluation on teaching effectiveness. And I think even in this question, I want to kind of rewrite this question to say there's both teaching effectiveness and then there's the course design. And they're very separate elements, and so that's one thing that learners sometimes struggle to understand, that there is a separation between the design of a course and the implementation of a course. And so when we look at teaching effectiveness, that's really the implementation on the part of the faculty member, who may not necessarily have design of the course or control of design of the course. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So what we try and do at our institution is separate out clearly the design of the course resources, course materials, timing, workload, rigor, and evaluate those separate and independent from implementation of teaching, engagement of the instructor, answering questions, subject matter expertise, access to the instructor, and really separate those two out because they inform very different continuous improvement models where we would look at student data on, geez, this course was just far too rigorous, it was inappropriate. You know, I spent 80 hours on this one low-level, barely evaluated project kind of a thing. We also, you know, tend to triangulate that with data as well. But that allows us to look at the design of the course separate from the implementation of the course, where you may have wonderful instructors who are overcoming poor design courses by sheer force of will, if you will. And so that helps us triangulate and say, okay, we need to work on a design of a course where maybe this is a well-designed course, but maybe it's not a great match for this instructor. And so we use the different data points to help drive that continual improvement process.
Thank you so much. It appears that as if we're out of time, so I'm going to pass it over to Byron at this point. Thanks again for your in-depth responses. Byron?
Thank you, Rohan, and this is really insightful discussions here. And unfortunately, we are running short on time today and cannot fit in additional questions. So that closes out today's guest panel. If you have any other questions, Rohan and I will compile and forward those to Dylan and Alex, and we will post their responses in the Canvas discussion area. So, believe it or not, this is our last webinar. And this week is your time and hours to catch up. You have until Monday, April the 4th to submit any assignments to earn badges. At 11:40 and 59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the assignments will close. Rohan and I, we are working frantically to catch up with all the DIY grading. We are working on the last DIY assignments first, and then we'll circle back to the DIY 1 and 2 assignments. And don't forget about the UCF EDUCAUSE certificate. If you have been submitting the DIY projects each week, you are a strong candidate for the UCF EDUCAUSE certificate. If you plan to register for the certificate, please register and begin the payment process. You can find all detailed information about the certificate in the last module of the course, the UCF certificate, UCF EDUCAUSE certificate module. You have a 3-week window from today, March the 28th, to April the 18th to submit your portfolio for the certificate. And here is our plan for reviewing portfolios. So you can submit your initial portfolio by April the 18th, 2016. Rohan, I, and the evaluation team will review your portfolio. We will review your materials and return them with comments by May the 2nd. You have an opportunity to make changes and resubmit your portfolio no later than May the 16th. Rohan and I, we will submit names of the portfolio completers to EDUCAUSE on May the 23rd, and EDUCAUSE will issue the certificate and badge. The continuing education credit, CEUs, will be offered for the first time this year. So if CEUs are valued by your employer or industry, you might want to consider this option. The detailed instruction is in the Getting Started module. You can read the criteria for evaluating the portfolio in the rubric inside the portfolio assignment. So I have received a few questions about how long the BlendKit materials will be available. The Canvas course will close in mid-May. Until then, you can click around and look at the materials. Remember, all assignments close on April the 4th. However, our BlendKit course materials are available online. You can find them at bit.ly/BlendKit. Also, the BlendKit course materials have a Creative Commons license and are available. If you or your colleagues would like to adapt BlendKit for your own needs, we'd be happy to discuss this with you. In fact, we would encourage you to join or start a group with colleagues who are teaching blended learning courses so that you can encourage one another and share successful practices. By the way, we are looking for colleagues to help with updating the BlendKit course materials. If you're interested in helping with that process in any way, please sign up at the bit.ly website and listed on the bottom of this page, and we will follow up with you. So we have been watching the week 5 feedback form, and again, many participants find the DIY assignments and the readings are useful. If you haven't got a chance to complete the form, you will find the week 5 feedback form at the end of the module 5, or the link is listed here on the slide. Also, we will be sending out an overall BlendKit course evaluation that is housed outside of Canvas. If you only have a few minutes to spare, I would much rather you complete the overall BlendKit course evaluation and be on the lookout for it next week. And even if you just checked into the course a few times, please complete this final evaluation. Right now, I'll pause here for a moment in case there are any other logistical questions or issues anyone wants to raise. Okay, so thank you so much for your participation in today's session and in the BlendKit course as a whole. Thank you again for today's guests, Dylan and Alex, and as always to John Pizzo. And special thanks to all of our guest panelists. We really appreciate your insights and answers during the 5 webinars. So please keep in touch. It has been a great pleasure to work with every one of you in BlendKit. We wish you all the best as you pursue the development and teaching of high-quality blended learning courses. Thank you very much.